You're listening to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses. Each week, you'll hear my thought-provoking conversations with Olympians, pro athletes, CEOs, elite coaches, best-selling authors, and other high performers to uncover their secrets to success. Get ready to be inspired each week when we talk about leadership, teamwork, work ethic, and more. Are you ready? Let's go. This week, my guest is pro footballer and West Bromwich Albion team captain Jed Wallace. Jed is amidst a remarkable pro football career. He's played in over 500 professional games for some of England's most prestigious clubs. But as you'll hear in our conversation, Jed's path to pro football is a bit unconventional. Unlike many of his peers, Jed didn't join an academy at age 7 or 8. Instead, he spent his childhood and a lot of his teenage years simply playing football with his friends. At around age 16 or 17, he was still playing non-league football, as he puts it, in front of just 50 people. But by that point, he believed he had a chance to one day play professionally, and ultimately made the decision with his parents to pursue pro football more intently. Fast forward to today, and Jed's played in more than 500 professional games. And he will still tell you that he's not the most technically gifted player on the pitch. Instead, Jed's differentiator is his drive and an unmatched focus, work ethic, and humility that he brings to his craft. Jed and I recently sat down to explore his remarkable journey. Our conversation began with Jed taking me back to that moment when he was 8 or 9 years old and received a pair of new football boots for Christmas. From there, we covered Jed's journey that has taken him from playing football on the school playground to some of England's most prestigious clubs. I walked away from our conversation absolutely inspired by his humble mindset, extraordinary work ethic, and the remarkable commitment Jed has to always reach his full potential. There are so many career and life lessons that all of us can take from Jed's story and apply to our own lives. I truly hope that you take away as much from this conversation as I have. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Jed Wallace. Where I want to begin, I want to go way back. What is your first football memory?
My first football memory, my memory's terrible, to be quite honest with you. My first one would probably be, I remember for Christmas when I was 8 or 9, and I got my first real pair of football boots. And by real pair, they were like 130, 140 pounds from my mum. Mercurial Vapors, gold, with one gold. And I remember my dad saying to me, "Oh, you better be good if you're wearing them." The flashiest boots that you could get at that age. I got them, and that was kind of my earliest football memory when I think of like when I really started getting into it properly.
What was it about those boots that like sparked such a special emotion for you?
I think you see your favourite players wearing them on the TV, and at that time I was probably 7 or 8, and it was like 2002, 2003. So it was Thierry Henry, Ronaldo, R9, original Ronaldo for Brazil, and those guys are wearing them boots. So obviously me at 8 or 9 years old, they're metal studs, so I'm wearing them everywhere. I can hear my mum having a go at me I can still remember the noise clinking them along on the kitchen floor, probably scratching the tiles. But no, there's the memories, and nowadays I wear boots for probably 2 or 3 games and I switch them, whereas back then you'd get a pair of boots at that money for my mum and dad, and I'd probably wear them for 2 years until they were falling apart. So no, it does sometimes when I get a new pair of boots now every week, it kind of makes me think back to those times and realise how lucky I am to be in a position I'm in now, really.
Do you also think about when you change those boots every few days or every week, like you said, do you also think about the people out there who are the 8 and 9-year-olds who are putting on a pair of boots because you wear those boots and they're excited because, like, is that something that you think about?
Yeah. When you say it like that, I think for me, I like to think of myself as really just quite a normal person. I just spoke to you before we started recording. I've got 3 kids myself, and I do the school run every morning, and today's been chaos in my house because there's 3 of them. We've got to get them to bed, and every day for me is completely normal. I don't really think of myself as an athlete in terms of, I don't think of myself as someone that would be recognisable walking down the road. And then sometimes you kind of pinch yourself where you do go to a stadium, and obviously now being captain of West Brom, and I arrive at the stadium, and as I drive in, I see the dads and their sons and the grandparents all walk into the stadium. And you sort of, sometimes they see me in the car and they're all the kids are all excited waving and things like that. And you sometimes do have a sort of moment where you think how far you've come. And that was me walking to Portsmouth or Farnborough with my uncle. I used to watch a lot of football when I was young, sort of going to the stadium to see your favourite players playing. So yeah, I think for me and the rest of the boys at West Brom, to be honest, you just see yourself as a normal person. And then sometimes you forget to some people that maybe you're a little bit more than that. And that's the honour of being a professional footballer, I think.
It's sure an honor, and it's one that I know you take tremendous pride in and put so much respect towards. I'm curious if we go back to that moment when you put on those boots, that first memory that we talked about of football. Now, there's a big difference between putting on a pair of boots that your favorite player wears and becoming a pro footballer. When you put on those boots, I'm curious, like, did you know right away that you were pretty good when you first began playing, or did it take some time for it to come together for you?
No, I think my journey is slightly different to the normal story that maybe you would hear, where from the age of 7 or 8, you're in an academy and you're training professionally for 2 or 3 hours, 3 times a week. I was literally playing with my friends till I was 16. Of course, I wanted to be a footballer. I'm not naive. I was good, but not to the point where I think I was amazingly better than everyone else. I was just on the school playground. Without being cocky, I'd like to think I was the best player, but not in terms of like everyone would be talking about me as if to say, wow, this guy's definitely going to be a football player. But that was mainly because I was still playing with my friends. You'd hear other people that were playing for Chelsea and everyone would be like, wow, he plays for Chelsea, or wow, he plays for Fulham, in the area that I grew up. For me, I just played with my friends and got to sort of 15 or 16 and thought, well, maybe I've got a bit of a chance at it. And I was lucky that my mum and dad never really had the conversation with me that, what are you going to do? It was kind of, we were quite relaxed about trying to become a football player, and then got to sort of 16 or 17 when I was still playing non-league football in front of 50 people, and thought, right, if we're going to do this, then I should probably try and get myself into a professional setup, and the rest is history, I think.
When you were on that playground playing with the friends at school, did you have a sense as to what areas in particular you needed to really grow and develop for you to feel like you could play on the same level with the people that were in the academies at that point?
Yeah, I think it was difficult. I think the way I looked at football, and my dad always said it to me, and I think it's something now that I would take with my own kids, and any kid I speak to, I say the same thing. I think if you're improving and you're enjoying it, then it's going in the right direction. And that's something which I look back now, and my dad did put pressure on me, but never in terms of pressure to be a football player. It was more little things, like I can remember talking about memories in the kitchen when I was sort of 14, 15, and all my friends would start maybe going out to parties and drinking. And I would say to my mum, oh, can I go out to a party tonight? And she'd be like, of course you can, like, you've got to enjoy your life, da 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 da. And I was very focused even at that age. I was decided I want to do it. And I could just hear my dad now even going, oh, you don't want to be a footballer anymore then? You know, just the little subtle ones to keep me on my toes. That is his way of kind of keeping me on my toes at that age. And I was lucky my dad, and look back now and think my dad was still is a full-time builder, and my mum was working full-time in a trophy factory, and they drove me all around the country to play football with no guarantee that I was ever obviously going to be a professional. So now I'm a parent myself, I realise the sacrifices that they made me, and even my younger sister at the age of 12 or 13, the last thing she probably wanted to do was stand on the side of a football pitch when it's raining. So they're the sort of sacrifices that you don't forget when you get to the point in my career now. It's
interesting, Jed, when you tell those stories, it almost feels like, like the pressure that your father maybe applied to you subtly. It was not necessarily creating this pressure that you've got to become a pro footballer because I want you to become a pro footballer, or mom and I want you to become a pro footballer. Essentially what he was doing was he was trying to instill habits in you that would serve you well regardless of what you would end up doing. That's kind of what I hear in that. Do you think that as well?
Yeah, 100%. I'm really, really thankful now. I think having your own kids, you understand how important your upbringing is and how it molds you to be the person you are. I think I had a brilliant upbringing. I couldn't have asked for any more. And even to this day, I can get in the car. I played over 500 professional games now, and I know when I play well and I know when I don't play well. And sometimes I get in the car with my mum and dad after the game, and I know I've not played well, and our first thing, I'll sit down and I'll go, which is basically me saying I've had a bad day at the office, and my mum will go, I thought you were brilliant, darling. And I'll just see my dad just a little shake of his head. So I think for me, it's still trying to impress my dad. And my dad is one of my best friends, and it's something that I find comfort in, knowing that he's in the stand. And it's always been that way. It's been a journey for all of us together. He probably stresses it means as much to him and to my mum and to my sister and to my wife now as it does to me, to be honest. And that is the side I think of any athlete. It's sort of not just yourself, it's your family that go on that journey with you. But like you said, Andrew, I think that upbringing that I got from my mum and dad, really whatever I ended up doing, I think I was brought up in the right way, which was always going to help me.
That is, Jed, something that so many people forget. So many people on the outside look at athletes and they think it's a singular journey. And in almost every instance, there are countless people, parents and family and friends and coaches and mental skills coaches and equipment managers and trainers and different folks who pour into, that career and what ends up becoming a career. And I'm always amazed at stories like that, where it almost feels as though the others are taking equal, if not more, pride in what's been accomplished by that individual. So a question that I ask people all the time who have achieved, any measure of success in anything is this idea. I asked them this idea of, do you think that work ethic is something that you're born with or something that you develop over time? Now, based upon our conversation so far, I'm going to guess that you believe that part of your work ethic is baked into your DNA. Your parents are incredibly hardworking, incredibly motivated. So a lot of that, maybe you were born with. But I also don't believe it just stops there. I believe there's a lot of people who are born in environments where people around them work hard, but they don't achieve their full potential or exceed what they thought their potential was. So I'm curious, where do you get that work ethic from, in addition to, obviously the environment around you?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. It's something that I'm actually quite fascinated in myself. Still, obviously, I have 3 boys, 2 of them are old enough now to play football. And I think before I had kids myself, I kind of thought maybe you're just born, you can learn to be good at something. I think sometimes there's a natural degree of talent with, for example, my 2 boys. My oldest, sporting wise, he's not that gifted, even from catching a ball at the age of 2, or even now if we play football in the garden, he isn't technically gifted from birth. But he didn't walk till he was 15 months. And then I look at my second son, who was walking at 9 months, and he's just got the timing of, if I throw him a ball, he knows when to let it bounce from the age of 3 to then be able to volley it. So I think I was probably lucky I was born with that little bit of technical side, but I think certainly I've always had that work ethic, and I've always been very, very driven, and I am now, because I'm certainly not, very rarely I've been in a dressing room where I've been the most talented player. Far from it, to be quite honest, but I've almost always been the fittest player. I've always run the most in nearly every game that I've played. And I think I have an attitude that I like to help my teammates, and that's my main strength, probably, rather than being someone that's technically really gifted. So, but I also, to be honest, I recognised that at a young age. Probably at 17 or 18, I realised that was my strength. My strength was my fitness and my drive, and I wasn't embarrassed by that. I think sometimes a lot of people are embarrassed that they want to be the most technical player and look the best. And I kind of realised what my tool set was at a young age. And I think that's really, really helped me throughout my career to, in some ways, to realise that, okay, what makes me good is working hard. And if I don't work hard, then I'm not great. And I think that's something that I've always sort of carried with me, to be quite honest.
From that 15 to, let's say, 18 period of time where you had the conversation with your parents about getting into a more professional setup, putting yourself on a track with a little bit more focus towards making this a possibility, then in that 17 to 18 year range, coming to the realization that your biggest strength was your ability to work and put in the effort. What else were you doing at that point that you believe helped accelerate your trajectory towards ultimately where you are today?
Yeah, so again, I was, honestly, when I look back now, it puts a smile on my face, really. I think how differently things could have gone for me when I was I think I was maybe just left school. I was probably 17. I started doing a sports science college thing where you play a bit of football, learn a little bit about physiotherapy, sports science, that kind of stuff. That program actually folded. So then I found myself having nothing to really do. And at this point, I was kind of like, right, do I go and learn a trade, like become a plumber or electrician, or do I throw myself into the football? So I sort of was going to the gym 3 or 4 hours a day, training for my local non-league team. And then it was probably a realization that, right, we need to start going on trials and see if I am as good as we all hope I am, because we sort of put this plan together. And I remember I was meant to go to Everton on trial, and it got snowed off. And I was like, oh my God, here we go. Like, bit of bad luck, snowed off. And it never snows in England, by the way. And then I went to Leeds, and I'd done really, really well for 3 or 4 days. And I thought, right, I feel like I'm one of the best players that's trained. I feel like I deserve a contract. And I got offered nothing. And I was like, well, maybe, okay, I need to not become a football player. Maybe I'm not as good as I think I am, and whatever else. And then I went to Portsmouth a couple of weeks later, and basically Steve Cottrell was the manager, and I was running with the youth team, and obviously I was part-time and all the youth team were full-time. And he came over and he watched the running, and I was winning the running. And he kind of said to the youth team coach, oh, who's that? And they were like, oh, he's on trial. He's only part-time, but I was winning all the running. So I think that was the first time that he sort of really noticed me. And that goes back to what I said, where I sort of gave myself that opportunity, being one of the fittest players I could be and everything else. And I still think genuinely it was nothing to do with football. The fact that he saw me part-time and that I was out running the other youth team players that were full-time is kind of why he took a little bit of a liking to me. And then I played a trial game and I signed a 3-year contract the next day. And to be honest, from that moment, that was my sort of foot in the door. And then once I'd got my foot in the door, I was determined that I realised how lucky I was and how hard it is to get to that point. And I wasn't going to let it go, to be honest.
It's incredible to think in that moment, it was nothing technical from a football perspective. As you said a few minutes ago, it was this desire that you had to be the most fit and to run the fastest, run the hardest.
Yeah.
And that was ultimately what got you noticed. Obviously, there had to be a level of football ability around it to go with it, but it wasn't the technical football ability that ultimately got you noticed and got you that opportunity. So you get that 3-year contract. When you flip from, okay, maybe this could happen, to now I have an opportunity, it doesn't sound like the mindset shifted for you in a negative way. It shifted in a really positive way, that you felt like you had this tremendous opportunity that you need to make the most of. But was there any sense of pressure creeping into your mind that, hey, I could squander this? Hey, this is my moment. I need to meet this moment. Talk about that for a minute.
100%. I think when I could think back now to when I was sort of younger, I think my biggest detriment to how I performed was trying too hard. And so when I went into Portsmouth, there was a lot that come with it. It was moving an hour away from my family. So moving in with another family in Diggs, called Diggs. I moved in with an amazing couple called Trevor and Wendy that looked after me, and they became like a second set of parents for me in Portsmouth at 17, moving away, and then also going full-time. So I was part-time, training full-time, and how much that put on my body at the age of 17. And also I was so nervous because I'd worked my whole life to get to where I was. And Portsmouth were a big club. They'd just been relegated from the Premier League a couple of years before. And I felt that nervous energy constantly. And I found it hard to almost express myself as a football player as much as I could because I was so nervous. Even when I started doing well in the youth team, I remember one of my coaches would come down, Andy Orford, and he'd say, oh, Jed, you're training with the first team today. And I'd almost be like, oh no, because I just wanted to stay in the youth team where I felt comfortable with my friends. But also, of course, you want to train with the first team because of the opportunities that it brings. So I went into the full-time environment, struggled really, to be quite honest with you, I struggled. And then I went back out on loan to non-league, which was like 2 or 3 leagues below the professional environment, which was semi-professional. And that's where I kind of really found my confidence and found my feet. I scored 13 or 14 goals in 10 or 11 games. And then I had a little bit of luck at Portsmouth where they went into administration. So they had no money, they had no players, so they had no other option to play young players really. And me and a few of my friends played, and I scored 3 goals for the first team in my first 3 games. And I think after that, I missed 1 out of the next 150. So that little bit of luck I had in that opening where the club were financially, they were quite doomed at the time. So they had to play young players. And then I just really, to be honest, never looked back from that moment on. I've just loved every minute.
I'm a big believer that high performers create their own luck. And when you put in the work, you put in the reps, you create more surface area and more opportunity around you, that a moment like that is going to present itself where the club doesn't really have anywhere else to turn, and you've put in the work and now you've got an opportunity. I'm curious, you talked about kind of like 2 distinctly different situations there, like where I think growth happened for you professionally and personally. There's the environment where it was extremely challenging and you were working with the senior club And then you went back to non-league where you felt like you were probably the best player in the bunch. And it feels like in both of those experiences, you had growth. In one, because you were pushed and you were challenged, and the other because it kind of reinforced your confidence, it seems. Talk about that for a minute. Like, how did you kind of put those two together? Is it something that necessarily you were thinking about at the time, or is it something more that we can kind of reflect on now?
No, it's a really good point. I think certainly I went to a team called Whitehawk, and it was a realizing moment where I'd signed for Portsmouth and everyone was talking about, oh, Jed's a professional football player. But I wasn't, because I'd signed for Portsmouth on a first year professional contract. So I'd not played for the first team or anything. I was basically a youth team player. But obviously everyone in their head, you've cracked it, you're a professional footballer, which wasn't the case at all. And going back to Whitehawk, I remember turning up in the first game, there was like 75 people watching the game. And I thought, right, this is make or break time for me, really. And I remember there was a group of players there that were very good and coming towards the end of their career. And they'd all played in the Championship and the Football League loads of times. And I'd played 3 or 4 games, and a couple of them spoke to me and sort of said to me, like, no disrespect, but what are you doing here? Like, why are you playing for us, basically? And I was a bit like, well, no, that's the level I am at the moment. That's what I'm doing. And even with little things now, I look back on things like that, where that's like almost a seal of improvement and a seal of confidence from players that have played at the level I wanted to play at. And I even speak to them guys sometimes now, and when they say to me, oh, we've always watched your career and we knew what you were going to do, what you've done, stuff like that, it's really humbling, because the tables are kind of turned. From 10 years ago, I was looking up to them guys, and now they're almost looking down at me. I'm really happy for me and what I've managed to achieve. So I think sometimes the main lesson I learned really from that was sometimes taking a step back to then catapult myself forward. I think that was honestly career defining for me. And people sometimes forget that going to non-league and playing in front of 80 people, that catapult. I think 6 months later, I played for England under 19s. So really that 6 months, it was like a whirlwind. But I honestly put my career down to that period I had with Darren Freeman, who was a manager, who's a fantastic guy, and just sort of gave me that belief in myself that I think I'd maybe been missing a little bit since I turned professional.
There is a lot to be said for that idea that you just mentioned there of taking a step back. Ultimately, it enables you to take a bigger step forward in many instances. One of the common through lines through so many of the conversations that I have with people is the idea that failure, adversity, these types of things are opportunities for growth. And a setback, if you utilize it to your advantage, is a massive, massive opportunity to kind of push yourself forward. They always say, challenging times, are really like the best way to figure out like who's good and who's great, because the great ones really, really, really bubble up. I'm curious, have there been other times since throughout your career, or even like individual moments in a game or individual kind of periods of time in a season where you have consciously said to yourself, you know what, I need to slow down a little bit to go faster? Not necessarily physically slow down, but like I need to slow down to go faster. Like, has that kind of popped into your mind since?
Yeah, I think football time goes so quick. I think now I'm 30 now, and I've played a lot of games, and I remember being 2021 and the senior players in the dressing room go, oh, it goes so quick. And I think, come on, man, it don't go quick. Now on the other end of it. And I think sometimes you can get caught up in professional sport and it goes so fast. And I think one thing I've learned probably the last 4 or 5 years, like you said, is I try not to get too deflated if things don't go as well as I hope. And my wife's the one that always says to me, she's like, football is, you're lucky it can change so quick. You can play bad for 20 games and you just come alive for 2 matches. And all everyone remembers is the positive stuff. So that's something I've always tried to take with me the last 3 or 4 years. And I think I learned a lot from losing that little bit of confidence at a younger age. I felt like I had to kind of go through that really to set me up for that mental strength that you need in the Football League to go right the way through. And I've run my contract down at my previous club, and I had mentally, that was something that I didn't really want to do, but something I felt I kind of had to do. And sometimes you'd have a wobble on that where you'd think, oh no, I've had a couple of bad games and I'm out of contract in the summer and no one's going to want me. And that's when you lean on people that you trust and speak to them, and they go, you'll be fine. Like, you've had 2 bad games. It's nothing to panic about. And I think that's what we touched on earlier. I think having that support network for anyone is so important. To anyone that's successful in sport, you need people around you that you can lean on and have a little rant at sometimes, and then they can also say to you that you need to liven up and do a little bit better. So, and I've got that in abundance, which I'm lucky about, really.
Yeah, it is. It's clear that you've got that in your parents and your wife, and I'm sure so many others that we haven't even talked about. You've talked about managers and coaches that you've worked with over the years. I really do believe that a support network that serves both purposes, that lifts you up a little bit when you're down and kind of knocks you down a little bit maybe when you get too high, is a really good formula for success. So you've talked about the trajectory of your career, over 500 games at this point. You used the phrase, I'm kind of like on the other side of it now relative to when I was a 21-year-old, kind of looking up at everybody else in the dressing room. Now you are the captain. Your coach, when he named you captain, said that, really for you, and I want to get this right here, he said, you also need to look at who acts like a captain without being a captain. This is what Coach Corberon said as you were named captain. He said, the captain also needs to lead by example. He needs to show an exemplary level of commitment in training, in matches, and to his job every single day. Certainly, the way you were raised, the way you've carried yourself out your career is exemplary and meets all that criteria. I'm curious, now that you're in the role as captain, how does that kind of change? Does it change the way you go about your business in any way?
I think I've certainly, in my younger years, I was lucky. I played with lots of brilliant professionals, and you take a little bit of something from everyone. I think I have my flaws where sometimes when I was younger, it means so much to me, football, that sometimes I probably struggle to put a lid on that emotionally, and I'd get so fired up and so just when it wouldn't go well. I think you sort of learn through experience and how to. I still feel that way. I just know how to hide it better, so people don't see that. But no, certainly, I think being named captain of West Brom is for me, it was a pinch me moment in terms of looking back and realising, wow, what an achievement. I think I said it to the press when it was announced that, honestly, at 16, me, my mum and my dad, we set a target of me playing in the conference, which was one league below the professional league, and earning a wage that I could sort of get by on. And that was the target. Honestly, if I could have done that, I would have took that. So to even play 10 games for West Brom, I probably would have laughed you out the door at 15, 16. So to be captain of the football club is something that it's not lost on me. And to be honest, it's something I've loved. I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed the responsibility of it. I'm always someone that I think managers know what they're going to get out of me, in terms of I'm quite reliable, and I'm going to give my best. And if I don't play well, that's fine. If I play well, great. But I like to think I'm quite reliable in what you're going to get out of me, and I'll try and help my teammates around me. And it's something I'm really enjoyed. I'm really lucky that we've got, because there are good and bad dressing rooms in all sport. And everyone always says, oh, we've got a good dressing room, but sometimes you don't. I am blessed and lucky that we've got a lot of great lads in the dressing room at West Brom. It makes that role for me quite easy. And we've got a group of boys there that have been for five or 6 years. They've been there and they understand how the club works, and they welcome me in really well. Been there 2 years, and honestly, I've loved it, and I hope I can remain there for a long time, to be honest.
Jed, what do you think that you enjoy the most about the role of captain?
Yeah, for me, I quite like the role of being able to pick yourself out of your comfort zone and it not being about you, which I've quite enjoyed. Kind of at Millwall, it was kind of like I was the main player, and a lot of good things come with that. You take the penalties, you do this, you can do that, you can give the ball away 10 times in a row, no one cares, because they also know that you're one of the best players. And I think what I've really enjoyed at being captain now is being able to do that role and taking a step back and letting other people really, really express themselves. And this season, I played a little bit of an unfamiliar role. I played as a striker, which isn't probably suited to my best strengths, but it's something that I've quite enjoyed, because we've had a young guy come through playing in my position that I normally play, and he's through the academy. He's 19, 20 years old. He's a great kid, and I've really enjoyed watching him grow and then watching him really make a career for himself and supporting him through that role. And it's just things like that maybe 5 or 6 years ago I probably would have just wanted to play every single match and wanted the best for myself. And I think as you get older and you come to a club like this and you realise that, for me, the be all and end all is getting promoted, and kind of set that target at the start of the season. We get promoted, and if I play 5 games or I play 25 games, if I play well or I don't play well, as long as we get to where we want to get to, that was the target that I set, and that hasn't changed. With 2 games left in the league, that's still a realistic target for us. And the opportunity that comes with obviously being in the Premier League is what we all want.
It's not surprising, given the way you go about your business and the way you lived your life, Jed, but I'm just struck by the selfless nature of what you described there, right? A young player up and coming through the academy, you shift into a role that's a little unfamiliar to you, like you described, to help and enable that individual to thrive. I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a great team in anything, in sport, in business, in a community where you don't have people playing that role that you're playing in that situation. I think it says a ton about you. I am curious, as we look to kind of wrap up our conversation, when you have to kind of like distill it down, what would you say you're most grateful for the career that you've had so far? Like, what gives you the most gratitude?
That's a tough question. I think, honestly, that moment for me when I drive to the stadium, I think sometimes if you're injured or you're not in the squad and then you arrive at the stadium a little bit later, sort of say you kick off at 3:00, if you're injured, you might arrive to the game at 2:30. So you really see the floods of thousands of people coming in with like their t-shirt over their jumper, their match day shirt over their jumper, things like that. And for me, that just brings back memories of, like I said, with my mum, my dad, my uncle going to watch Reading, Portsmouth, non-league football. And at that time, the thought of being able to do that and play at them stadiums, even for 5 minutes. If you'd have said to me at 10, you can play in the stadium for 5 minutes in front of all these people, I'd have loved it. And that's something that I don't lose sight of. Obviously, I've been really lucky to have the career I've had, and I still think I've got plenty more to give. And that's why I'm so desperate to get in that Premier League, because that's where every kid wants to play. And the memories I've had along the way, the people I've met so far has been great. I've loved it. And to be fair, it surprises me still how much I really enjoy it. And for me now, the winning feeling now, I think the training you probably don't enjoy as much as I did when I was younger, but that winning feeling now, it means more than anything now. I think as you get older, you realise how important it is for the team to win games. And the number one thing I still love is after like a gritty 1-0 win, that euphoria of hard work and getting together in the dressing room after and the music comes on and the lads have really fought hard for a victory. For me, it's the best feeling that we can have as a team. And certainly if we can manage that at Wembley this season, that would be the pinnacle of it all, I think.
What a special feeling that must be. I can only imagine. Jed, there is no question, as I like to say every week on this podcast, you are a tarp puller. You are forever part of the everybody pulls the tarp family. You put in the work, you do whatever's asked of you, and you lift everybody else up around you. And you're so grateful and I'm just struck by how grateful you are for the opportunities that you have had and continue to have, and how grateful you are for the people around you that in many ways pulled the tarp and continue to pull the tarp for you. So this has been a tremendous, tremendous amount of fun and such a great learning experience for me to just listen to you and understand, a little bit more about your remarkable journey. So thank you for spending a few minutes with me this week. All right, Jed, thank you so much.
Been a pleasure, mate. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak to me. Thanks very much, man.
All right, everyone. If you loved this episode, you might also enjoy my interview with Rand Pecknold. In 1994, Rand took the head ice hockey coaching job at Quinnipiac University for a $6,700 salary. At the time, Quinnipiac was playing Division III hockey, coming off of a dismal 6-18 season and practicing at midnight, the only time available at the local rink. Over the past 30 years, Rand catapulted the program to national prominence and recently led the team to its first national championship. This is another episode you don't want to miss. Check it out and let me know what you think. Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Twitter at Andrew H. Moses. That's Andrew H. Moses. And be sure to sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Today is a great day to pull the tarp. I am rooting for you. See you next time.